All right, guys, we're back and we're talking about phase one, which is the sexiest phase. It's the one that you guys all came here for. It's literally the best thing about training, which is rolling around like a dead fish on the ground with a foam roller in orifices and crevices that you never thought you'd be accessing with anything other than maybe your hands or the hands of a loved one. But that's what we're talking about here in phase one. Foam rolling, aka soft tissue techniques, aka self myofascial release. I see benefits from foam rolling. I can't tell you the amount of times that I've been asked, "Hey, John, do you believe in foam rolling?" I believe in it to do what I think it does for people, which is to help internal parking brake removal. What that means for me is 1 to 3 minutes once a day and getting a benefit and moving on to something a little bit more active, a little bit more pliable and plastic, which is trying to affect the brain as opposed to trying to affect the mechanical tissues, which are your muscles, tendons, fascia, and that type of stuff. But let's just call the shit what it is. Foam rolling is a means to an end. It is a little bit more fluffy. We need to make sure that we get in and out of foam rolling with effectiveness for getting us to that next phase, but also efficiency. Now, is there inherent danger or is there inherent risk to over foam rolling before you squat, over foam rolling before you deadlift, over foam rolling before you sprint? No, there's not. Just when I say that, in my day, I've had one client get hurt on the foam roller. And it was most likely just because he couldn't get off the ground and back up again. But it wasn't the foam roller's fault that that person got hurt. But in all actuality, the foam roller is a very safe and effective tool when utilized correctly. So let's get back to that. Why are we using phase one as soft tissue? Phase one in the 6 phase dynamic warm up sequence is essentially the first thing that we're going to do as a client walks through the doors of the gym, comes in to train, and literally starts the training process. We are simply trying to get ourselves feeling a little bit better, trying to mitigate some tension, some tightness. We are trying to address one soft tissue or region that may be the linchpin or that lines up with our key performance indicator movement of the day. More on that later. What we're not doing is foam rolling every nook and cranny of the body. What we're not doing is spending 45 minutes on a massage and running out of time to actually train. Now, the foam roller is an extraordinarily useful tool, but its biggest deterrent is not safety, but actual wasting of time. Let's call it what it is. Most clients, including yourselves out there, we have maybe 3 to 4 days a week to train. We probably have about 60 minutes per session. That is 3 to 4 hours a week to train. Say you roll around for 15 or 20 minutes for that 60 minutes. A third of your session's time is going into something that doesn't necessarily make you bigger, doesn't make you stronger, doesn't make you more jacked and tan, doesn't get your cardiovascular health up. It doesn't really do much of anything for you because there's very minimal return on time investment once we actually get what we need out of the foam roller, which is to add a novel stimulus into the soft tissues in the mechanical system of the body so it can go back up and affect the way that our tonicity is perceived in the brain. So what we're doing here is essentially using a piece of foam or a vibrating piece of foam or a lacrosse ball or something super cool that I don't even know about yet in order to affect the way that our brain perceives our relative tightness across a region, across a muscle, or centrally in the body. Nothing more, nothing less. But doing this for long enough, I believe that there are a time and a place, about 1 to 3 minutes, to get maximal benefit with maximal efficiency in order to actually have this as phase one in the 6 phase dynamic warm-up sequence. I kind of blew this slide because I talked a lot about a lot of these concepts previously, but it's worth breaking them down because the reason that people gravitate towards or against soft tissue work or foam rolling is because there are a lot of mythical misconceptions, zombie lies out there about what the foam roller is capable of doing for you, and more so what it's not. Now, we have this polarization of the industry over the last 10 or 15 years. I can remember being a freshman in high school. My dad was an athletic director of 27 schools in the Buffalo, New York area growing up. So I was always in the weight room, I was always in the gym and out on the fields. And I can remember as a freshman in high school going into the weight room, clanging and banging. We were squat, bench, and deadlift. We were getting strong, trying to get bigger, eating tacos every day, trying to get my jack on. And all of a sudden, one day, it was like late in the spring, all the weights were out in the gym. All of the cardio equipment was there. And then in the back corner of the room was this brand new thing that nobody had ever seen before. It was a circular piece of foam that people had not a clue what it was, nor what it did for us. I can remember like 2 or 3 weeks went by, and people would walk by this thing and be like, what the fuck is that thing? And then go back into the rack and start squatting. And we brought in a university professor from the kinesiology department at the University of Buffalo. I should say my dad did at the time. And he taught us, freshmen in high school, 14-year-olds, how to do soft tissue work for the first time. And I can remember, even at 14, I was like, this is fucking stupid because it doesn't make me bigger, stronger, and it doesn't make me jump higher because I was a basketball and baseball player. That's what I wanted to do. But those are the types of things that your clients are thinking as well. Your clients are thinking about losing that belly fat. They're thinking about getting a fat ass. They're thinking about building their pecs for summer so they could roll in like a boss to the beach club. They're not necessarily thinking about trying to work the infraspinatus with internal and external rotation with a lacrosse ball in their armpit. So the way us fitness professionals talk about some of these more fluffy modalities, like stretching, like breathing, like foam rolling, it's very important in terms of trying to drive their value home, but not overselling them as well. Now, 20 years ago, we didn't know what foam rolling was, but it seems like 10 years ago, if you didn't foam roll an hour a day, you were a bad person. You would read articles online, you go to the seminars, you do certification courses, 16 hours on how to foam roll every aspect of your body because this will cure cancer. So we went from nothing to everything. And I think a lot of people lost track of why we were doing what you're doing. If you don't know why you're using a tool, why you're using an exercise or a method or a programming strategy, you should probably either learn why you're doing that or not do it at all, because there's probably a more superior option for you to get results for your client or for yourself. That's the story with foam rolling. So we went from nothing to everything, and now we're trying to balance back that pendulum swing somewhere within the middle. What is the maximal benefit that I can get on minimal investment of time down on the ground on a piece of foam, rolling around in nooks and crevices, trying not to make eye contact with other people? That is the goal here. But why do people gravitate towards more and more and more soft tissue work? Call it what it is. It feels good if you do it correctly. You get down on that foam roller, you're rolling around on spots. It's intimate, you and this foam roller. You have a very strong emotional attachment to your foam roller because it makes you feel good. It makes you feel something different, a novel stimulus into the system. But a little bit goes a long way. And if you overdo it, not only do we blunt that type of stimulus, especially when we need it, but again, we take time away from maybe an additional couple sets of squats, an additional couple sled pushes, or getting on that Airdyne bike and getting finishers out that will actually make you a stronger, healthier, more resilient human being. But why do we gravitate towards it? One of the biggest key factors, something that I learned in doctoral studies, which I'm kind of embarrassed to say on this webinar right now, but I did, is that we are breaking down scar tissue with a foam roller. This piece of foam is capable of breaking down all of the adhesions, all of the cross linkages of fascia that you have damaged yourself with by moving your body for the last 30 or 40 years. This piece of foam will cure it all. Not exactly. Reason being, about 0.01% of benefits of foam rolling or any type of soft tissue modality will actually come from the chronic deformation of these tissues, AKA the breaking up of scar tissue. So where's the other 99.99% of the benefits coming from? That's actually in the literature. It's coming from utilizing this piece of foam, PVC pipe, kettlebell, whatever it may be, accessing certain portions of the body in terms of the sensation, in terms of the pressure, and all of the responses that we can have. And this coming back up into here, the brain, which regulates the entire movement system and the mechanical tissues, specifically the neurological tone. Neurological tone on tissues means the relative tightness. Now, I can go totally flaccid here. And I'm still looking all right. All right, it's good. But totally flaccid. And the tone of this tissue is lower than if I went to go and make a muscle, tone being higher. As tightness increases, tone increases. But the tone is regulated here. Now, where people go wrong is thinking that we have to mash tissues up locally, that we have to hammer different muscles in order to get a response here, or here, or here, wherever it may be. Neurologically speaking, 99.99% of the benefits of soft tissue work. Now I'm talking about foam rolling, talking about manual therapies, massage, are coming from the benefits of that circle loop back into the brain and helping manage the tightness across a region, a muscle, or centrally. That is where the benefits are coming from. But the coolest thing about this is that these benefits become very, very quick to access. In a matter of seconds sometimes, we are able to take something from tight as fuck to where it needs to be in order to optimize a human movement system. We are in the business of quick, rapid responses. And that is how we get maximal benefit out of 1 to 3 minutes, as opposed to wasting half of a personal training session or strength training session down on the ground humping a foam roller. So mechanical versus neurological. Mechanical benefits may be there. 7 years, hour a day, same spot, you might be able to break up some scar tissue. But doesn't 1 to 3 minutes of calculated approaches to soft tissue work to get maximal benefit sound better? It does to me, and it does to many of our coaches and clients utilizing these types of strategies out there. The next one we get all the time is that if you want toned, lean, long muscles, you must do soft tissue work. You must be on that foam roller religiously. If you're Netflixing and chilling, don't chill, foam roll instead. That's what we've been taught, because we can get longer muscles that are leaner and sexier. It's all bullshit. The only way to make a muscle longer is to change an origin or an insertion point and alter where those things go. What we're doing is not changing the length of a muscle, but its relative tightness, or going back to the term that we use, tone. For some spots, we want to reduce tone if it's too tight and altering the human movement system. In other spots, as we're going to go over with the neurological trigger point technique, there are times and places to actually upregulate tone because we want to be stronger and more stable in these positions. Tone is a barometer that can go up and down. A smart, savvy, and a systemized coach knows exactly what to give their clients and athletes at the right point in time to get the most out of their human movement system. Now, the human movement system is the ability for a body to squat, hinge, lunge, push, pull, carry, and rotate. How we locomote our bodies through space, how we integrate the upper lower body around that pillar complex, how we move as human beings. Now, we're going to talk a lot about the human movement system tomorrow and then on Sunday, but just being aware that the human movement system is naturally how we were designed to move. The foam roller is simply a tool that we can use to better optimize and regain access to that human movement system. Now, people do love the foam roller. If you're doubting that, just sign online and look at the next article that comes out about foam rolling versus not foam rolling, or look at the next Instagram post that is made about this being a piece of shit. You'll have 500 people flood the comment section like you just insulted their mother. This foam roller, I love it. It's my baby. I have grown very fond with this foam roller. It's been through tough times with me. I dedicate 2 hours a day to this thing. I sleep with it at night and sometimes even in the mornings. People are emotionally attached to this, again, because of the feelings that it gives us sometimes. So, what we fall into is the more is better mentality. We have people tuning in on this webinar from all across the world, but you Americans, you know exactly what I'm talking about. If more is good, a shit ton more is shit ton better. That is what we're thinking with foam rolling. Usually goes something like this. Oh, I went to physical therapy and I'm a runner. And my physical therapist said to warm up, foam roll, and stretch my calves before I go out and run. And wow, I don't have hip or knee pain anymore. This worked great. Foam roller saved my life. So if it could do that for my calves, what could it do for my hips? What could it do for my core? What could it do for my shoulders? Shit, I'm gonna get the obturator internus and I'm gonna work that bitch for 45 minutes a night because I know my hip internal rotation can get better if I deep down and invest in this. It becomes a ritualistic practice. The kind of thing that at night we lay down and we pray and we say, foam rolling gods, please, if I put in just another 5 minutes per day, keep me healthy against chronic pain and injuries. Keep me healthy enough so I can do the things that I want to do, which is usually some stupid shit in the gym or in sport. It becomes this ritualistic practice. What is a ritualistic practice? It's something that you hope and pray works, but you don't have any data on to say tangibly if it's benefiting you. What I like is a results-based practice. Results-based practice means that I know for certain that I am getting a tangible benefit to my actions that not only make me better today, not only make me better tomorrow, but line me up for living a better life in terms of movement and health and wellness. The foam roller can play a key integral role in that. But again, a little bit goes a long way. We all had clients that come in 45 minutes before their sessions and they think they're doing themselves good by rolling around and talking like it's a social hour before their sessions. But where our coaches go wrong is that we give this thing a little bit less credibility. We give it less respect than we would something like a barbell. Now, anything that we teach as PPSC coaches, we should be teaching with intensity. We should be teaching with a knowledge base and also educating not only on the benefits, but the results of why we're doing what we're doing so we can do it for a lifetime. Now, one of my biggest pet peeves is not coaching foam rolling the same way as you'd coach a squat or a lunge or a bench press. If you're going to do something with your clients, it is your duty to coach them correctly so they can execute it and they learn a little bit of something about themselves and their strategies so they can hopefully scale it for life. Now, the last one that we usually get in the more meathead crowds, you guys know who you are: powerlifters, bodybuilders, sports performance coaches. I'll raise my hand. I'm in that sect. I'm in that group. We're so worried about deactivating the CNS because we are in the business of building strong, twitchy, hardcore athletes. So we're going to squat. We want to squat the fucking house that day. And I read an article 25 years ago that said any soft tissue work before any explosive power or strength work totally negates benefits. You can't be explosive in the rack that way. It's kind of bullshit. When we break down the body of literature, duration matters, intensity matters and positions matter when it comes to getting maximal benefit from the foam roller for health and movement quality, while minimizing the risk of actually taking away from performance. But I can definitively tell you that over the years, utilizing 1 to 3 minutes of targeted soft tissue work before we get into more active solutions in a warm-up strategy, that this will supersede any negative benefits if you do it the right way. So you will get more out of your power, your strength, your performance by utilizing this tool correctly, as opposed to not utilizing it at all. So again, do I believe in foam rolling? Yes, I do. 1 to 3 minutes, but it depends how you use that 1 to 3 minutes. Now, soft tissue prep and training prep recommendations. This isn't going to look too sexy because it's not. This is, again, a means to an end to get a benefit and move on to something that stimulates us a little bit more up here. We want motor learning to be a vast majority of our session. And to be honest, we're not learning a whole lot about our human movement system laying down on a foam roller. So what we're doing here is trying to simplify the process for us, trying to simplify the system and make it largely scalable for our clients to be able to do on a daily basis or any type of training that they do. So we are going to be utilizing 2 fundamental techniques in the PPSC. There could be 80 techniques that we teach, but the reality is that we gravitate about 95% of the time to utilizing 2 techniques: the neurological trigger point technique and the oscillatory technique that you guys will see in a slide or 2 from now. Now, we're not going crazy on this stuff. We don't have to hit the entire lower body before a squat session. What we're doing is finding one key area, maybe the quads. And we're trying to pick 2 to 3 sections of that quad in order to get that 1 to 3 minutes out and actually target our attention at a goal in mind. Not coursing the area, but actually taking a sniper's approach as opposed to just firing into a field aimlessly. Now we're aiming for about 2 minutes, a total of 120 seconds. But the reality of training a client, especially in the first couple sessions where you're teaching some of the positions, some of the techniques and executional strategies, is closer to 3 to 4 minutes. As they get better, as they get more fine-tuned, we can actually get that down to 1 to 2 minutes. So have a little bit of patience, but anything that's worth programming is worth teaching the correct way. This is a big one. And guys, asterisk mark this on your paper. This is the pain-free performance specialist certification. If you signed up for the painful performance specialist certification, you're in the wrong spot. I'm sorry. But pain-free means that you should not be in pain while you train. Simple. That goes for the foam roller as well. Now, we've been taught in some sects to really mash the tissues, punish yourself. If you're not crying and sweating simultaneously, then you're not going hard enough on that foam roller. That negates the benefits, because what is the most sympathetic thing that you can think of? One of the most sympathetic things in the world, as Cliff talked to about the parasympathetic, sympathetic CNS spectrum, is actually pain on the far right-hand side. Pain is a threat to the body. And the goal of phase 1 and phase 2 is to tap into the parasympathetics: rest, recover, response, decrease vital metrics. If you have a foam roller in your ass and you're tapping out after 16 seconds because you think you're about to lose the feeling in your toes, that does not fit into the pain-free performance training model. Pain's relative. Pain is very, very relative to the person in front of you. But relatively speaking, 4 out of 10 on the max 10 out of 10 pain scale is what we're shooting for. In all actuality, if we sat with a 2 or a 3, I'd be extraordinarily happy with that. 0 out of 10 means that you don't have a pulse anymore, that you're probably fucking dead. 10 out of 10 means that you're going to the hospital now. It's like you're not getting in another 10 seconds of that foam roller. You're getting in the hospital, and we're going to probably have to put you into surgery. Let's go between 3 and 4 out of 10. Keep that in mind. And this is applying for about 95% of the population. There are going to always be outliers to the system, but the system allows for us to manipulate based on the person in front of us. But just when you think you're the outlier, remember that a vast majority of these techniques that are to be taught throughout these 3 days are done for the vast majority of people that we actually have the data on. Tens of thousands of users on programs, thousands of clients in person, and then 5,000 clients utilizing these systems with their clients across the world. Everything that we share with you is based on the best available evidence, but it's also dependent on how we are anecdotally continuing to study on a session by session basis with an army of PPSC coaches across the world. Just be very clear on that. Now, there are times to spend extra time on foam rolling. The time is to teach. The time is not to take away from other aspects of your program, whether it be power, strength, endurance, or conditioning work. Now, the first technique, and this is the most versatile technique of the two that we're going to be talking about, is called the oscillatory technique. It's in the name. The oscillatory technique is predicated on 1 to 2 inches of relative motion on the foam roller over the body. So a tiny oscillation instead of a static, and instead of a pizza dough roller that would course the entire body or tissue. Now, the reason that I love the oscillatory technique is because the body thrives with movement. We are a movement-based species. We do our best thinking, we do our best work, and we do our best physical exertion in motion. Our bodies were meant to move. Even though we're on a foam roller, we should use the fact that our body thrives in motion to actually get more benefits from the work that we're doing in this 1 to 3 minute segment. Now, motion allows us to tap into neuroplasticity that happens in the brain. The more relative motion, especially when we're at the right areas at the right times, allows for us to tap into a lot of deep receptors. It's not important to know mechanical receptors and proprioceptors and nociceptors and baroreceptors for pressure, for pain, for tension. It's important to know that you have some complicated shit happening on the skin surface, below the skin surface, in the fascia, and then of course through the neuromuscular system. We want to actually utilize this complex being, which is our central and peripheral nervous system, to get maximal benefits in a very simplistic way. Remember, every time that something like this touches the body, it's an opportunity to play with the brain's reaction and how it could manipulate the way that we move through space as individuals. Now, this has the ability to improve kinesthetic awareness, AKA fool the body into reducing apprehension. Our world has never been more stressed than we are right now, and justifiably so. Many of us, we have gym closures. We've lost work. We've lost loved ones. We don't know necessarily where our next dollar is coming from. We have kids at home that have been homeschooling for 9 months. You're going fucking insane. Sleep quality is down. Nutrition quality is down. Recovery is down. Training quality is probably not the best here. Most of your clients right now, if you're lucky enough to have clients walking through the doors, they're walking in like they just saw a ghost. They're like, holy shit, the last 24 hours were probably just as bad, if not worse, than the 24 hours before that. Things are tough out there. Things have always been tough, but we're having new problems, new challenges that we're having to come up and battle against on a seemingly daily basis. Many times, this foam roller can help us bring somebody from an 8 out of 10 stress scale maybe down to that 3 or 4 out of 10 before we actually get into some more active work. Now, this is important because you have to know the goal of soft tissue work. For us in phase 1 of the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence, the goal of soft tissue work is to reduce apprehension, is to reduce the vital metrics, heart rate, respiratory rate, blood pressure. We are trying to chill the fuck out. That needs to happen at a low pain scale. That needs to happen with exchanging air like a breathing human being. And it needs to happen with the right environment. Keep the goal with foam rolling, and you'll be able to get out in 1 to 3 minutes with better results than something that took you 20 to 30 minutes. Now, the oscillatory technique, just to reiterate, means that we have movement of the foam roller that is having contact with the tissues. So we are having relative motion, 1 to 2 inches of the foam roller moving under or over the body. Let's go to the next slide. Now, contrary to the foam roller moving, we have the neurological trigger point technique, which is actually the body moving over a stationary foam roller. Now, this is the yin to the oscillatory technique's yang. This is our opportunity to really deep dive into the neuromuscular system. And I like to call it a light switch area where we can really turn up tone or turn down tone strategically in a matter of a couple of seconds. Now, we like to call these wake up foam rolling drills for proprioceptive enhancement to try to get our body moving through space a little bit more agilely. And these also work extraordinarily well for chronic pain conditions, subclinical but still active, so we can calm their systems down and actually reduce a chronic pain response before we start utilizing our methods to get them a pain-free training effect that day in their sessions. Now, the oscillatory technique that we just talked about on the previous slide, it can be done for any muscle on the human body. We're going to talk about the ones that we utilize the most here in about a slide or two. But the thing about the neurological trigger point technique is it is dependent on being in the right spot. The right spots for us are highly neurologically dense areas, meaning that we have peripheral nerves that come closest to the skin and actually bundle in key areas, like the posterior shoulder girdle. You guys at home, you can feel right in behind your shoulder. It should feel like shit, not because, oh, I need to do more foam rolling there. It's because you have a nerve bundle there that is very close to the skin, meaning that you can actually palpate it and access it a lot easier than if it were under 3 or 4 layers of muscular tissue. The next one is the posterolateral hip. If you palpate this one, you have your hip bone, the thing that's sticking out of the hip. If you go 2 inches up, 3 inches back, and you push your thumb into that hip, that should not feel great. If it feels great, you've been doing too much foam rolling. You have a nerve bundle there on the backside of the glutes, the superior and inferior gluteal nerves. You guys don't have to know that. You just need to know that the reason that that doesn't feel awesome is because you're literally pushing on nerves that are reacting against the pressure. The next one is the anterior shoulder girdle. So if you think about having your palpation point kind of right under this collarbone here, an inch down, 2 inches over, right about there should feel terrible on people. Again, not because you need to do more rolling, because there's nerves there that are extraordinarily sensitive. Vastus lateralis, outside of the thigh, the biggest, most lateral quadricep muscle. Most people have these kind of knots or trigger points in their tissues there that are chronically there, not because of the tightness, but again, because of the nerve roots being very superficial, close to the skin. And the last one, make sure you guys get this on camera because I'm very excited to show these off. Can you see my calves right now? You can't. I'm looking at myself. Cameraman. I mean, this is what you guys have been waiting for. I can backside it. I can front side it. I actually measured my calves and they are bigger than Cliff's. But the backside of the calf between the medial and lateral gastroc and soleus, you will have a neurological trigger point there that are extraordinarily painful if you don't take care around the types of techniques that we're doing. For those of you at home, we're going to be talking calf training tomorrow. calf training, 16-hour segment on calf training because clearly it's been doing some good for me. So we have these highly neurologically dense areas. We have these areas that we know that can be like light switches. But the key is that we get in and out quickly on these because we just said that pain is not the goal for soft tissue work. The goal of soft tissue work is to move and feel better so we can get on to more active based strategies in the warm up and then ultimately in the training session itself. Now, the technique for neurological trigger points is the opposite of the oscillatory technique. Oscillatory technique, we have the foam roller moving over the body. For the neurological trigger point technique, we actually have the body moving on a stationary foam roller. What this is going to allow for is a lot of slide and glide and active motions. It's going to allow for a pin and a stretch, if you guys have heard that technique, over these neurologically dense areas where we actually are able to stimulate those superficial nerve roots a little bit more actively than if we were to just roll around on the foam roller itself. So this is having the ability to get closer to the nerves, have those light switches go off, but we need to be cognizant that we are going to be a little bit more sensitive in these areas. For everyone that went through all 5 of these that we showcase on this slide right here, they are sensitive areas. So we need to be in and out of these in probably about 5 to 10 seconds on average, meaning that we're going to move around a little bit wherever the foam roller may be, whatever that access point may be, and we're going to try to get the benefit in record time. Because if you sit on this nerve root for the next 20 minutes and you lose feeling in your hand, most likely your bench press is going to suck that day. We like sensation in our hands. We like pain-free training. That's the goal of being at the certification course right now. Even with something like foam roller, we need to keep the goal the goal. Now, there are common areas to address with soft tissue techniques. Now, this isn't a foam rolling certification. We are showcasing the things that we know to be damn effective and efficient to get your clients up so you can teach them how to be strong, resilient, and empowered human beings. These are the ones that with my own programming, with my clients, I utilize on a day-to-day basis. There's not a day that goes by that I don't program one of these 6 for our clients. These are truly the staples. Now, this is the roadmap to showcase a lot of these techniques to get you very comfortable with the oscillatory technique, with the neurological trigger point technique. But this is not a list of every single type of technique or region that we could be working on. Where we tend to run into trouble, especially when it comes to scope of practice for fitness professionals, as opposed to licensed healthcare professionals, is chasing pain. Now, I want to be blatantly clear on what we can and cannot do as fitness professionals. When it comes to the treatment and diagnosis of pain, that is not within our scope of practice. That is a time to refer to one hell of a physical therapist, chiropractor, sports med doc that gets that movement and training is part of a holistic healthcare approach. What we're not doing here is chasing pain, trying to play doctor without a license in these tiny little aspects of the body that you're having chronic problems with your clients. What we're doing is always showcasing our expertise, which is managers of the human movement system, optimizers of the human movement system, keeping the body's movement system as our goal to improve. That will keep you within a scope of practice, and that will also allow you to identify those people that may need clinical care. It does happen. And the worst thing that we can do is play doctor instead of getting them to someone who can give you more information on how you can utilize your skill set and your scope of practice better in training. That being said, we are going to be moving through these, showcasing them as demos first, and then breaking it down in practicals and going step by step in terms of setup, executional strategies, and then deep diving in on how we can make simple things better. Now, you guys may be sitting here in front of your screens right now being like, well, I've seen foam rolling for the quadriceps before. Everyone has. We're not acting like we invented any of these techniques. But what I will be a testament to is that we are going to coach, position, and strategize these techniques to make the simple more effective. Doing simple things extraordinarily well is a rare skill set in today's industry. We are so polarized on the shiny object syndromes on Instagram, on YouTube, wanting to do the latest thing when we can't even do the simple things that create a base of our results long-term and our health long-term extraordinarily well. So as we teach these foam rolling techniques, as I go through the demos and the practicals, I want you to take note of the positioning, the movement, and the execution, because quality does matter. It's not as simple as laying down on this thing and acting like you're gonna get maximal benefit. Sloppy foam rolling turns into 25 minutes to get the same result as fine-tuned foam rolling can get in 1 to 3 minutes. It's your choice if you wanna waste 17 minutes of your client's money, time, and energy, and your own energy doing something that doesn't essentially get them closer to the goal that they have. So we're gonna have Tim come up. Take your hat off. Before Tim gets up here, we're just gonna get both of these bald heads on camera. Big joke was we do have these new PPSC pattern pyramid shirts. They're fucking dope. Thank you, Vasa Fitness, for putting this logo together for us. But we had these brand new shirts made and they didn't actually come in time. So Tim actually made these shirts by hand. Tim and Amber Danchek literally printed these in North Carolina so our team could showcase them on our virtual PPSC. Pretty awesome. But Tim took a picture just to show everybody what he did, and about 300 people thought it was me doing a printing press in North Carolina. This is Tim. I'm John. He's bald, 185, 6 feet tall. I'm bald, 185, 6 feet tall. We are different people. We are not related. And I think I'm losing power on these. Guys, let's take 2 minutes. I'm gonna recharge this and we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about demo and practical for foam rolling.
Hey, Ote, I'm good on the audio? Okay. John just ran to the restroom real quick. Look, somebody on the chat said that John and I were looking like ballet dancers. And let me tell you, that's the nicest thing anyone said to me in a week. Those dudes are jacked and they jump really high. So thank you for calling us ballet dancers, because they are amazing athletes.
I missed it. All right, Timmy boy. Let me know when we're ready. Oh. All right, guys. Apparently Tim is videoing with a different camera, so you guys can see a couple different angles when you do indeed tune into this. Review your materials during the week, which is Christmas week, which is a little bit different this year. Let's keep on going. What we're gonna do here is get, we'll actually have Brittany come up. One of BioFit's finest, one of the best movers on the team, definitely moves better than owner Kevin Mason. We're gonna get her to showcase some of these demos for us in terms of foam rolling for the lower body. Now, the lower body, we are going to be focusing in on the trifecta that is going to have access into the hip complex. Now, there's a lot of different muscles at the hip that cross down into the knee and go into the feet, but these are the most effective ones that we can have widespread benefit from in terms of trying to create benefits to the human movement system. The quadriceps, AKA the front of the thigh, the adductor group, AKA the inside of the thigh, and the posterolateral hip, AKA the ass. It's gonna be weird. You're gonna have to foam roll your ass in front of 1,000 people right now. Are you cool? All right, so the first one that we're gonna do here is go for the quadriceps. Now, each and every one of these regions, I'm first gonna show the oscillatory technique, which is the foam roller moving over the body. Then we are going to double down and show the trigger point technique on the same area with the different technique, which is the body moving over the foam roller. So we're gonna go at a 45-degree angle here so we can actually see everything out on this. So I'm gonna have you get into this position, and this is exactly how I teach my clients as well. I show them the position that I want them to get into, which is here, and then I have you get into it. If you guys ever been in the position where you're like, hey, I want you to get down on the ground on forearms, one knee is out to the side, the other foot is to the left, you're gonna have the foam roll on your left thigh, but your core is gonna be tight, and you're like, just show them. So we say monkey see, monkey do when it comes to foam rolling setups, and it will save you 2 to 3 minutes every single time. So let's go exactly where I was. So for the first technique, we are going to be foam rolling the thighs. Now, I am not going to bias in terms of trying to talk about specific muscles. The quadriceps, clearly there are 4 quadriceps, but I am looking and going hunting for certain areas of the tissue that feel just a little bit more sensitive, knowing very well that we don't want a huge pain response. We also don't want to feel nothing, because nothing won't get us any benefits at all. So Brittany's down in this position, and the first thing that I want you to take note of is her neutral positions throughout her complex. Hips, shoulders, core. This is a nice neutrally braced position. And Brittany has just enough tension throughout her pillar that she can maintain this position throughout the dynamic motions, which is the oscillatory technique, 1 to 2 inches. Now, you can also take note of her ground contact. That is extraordinarily important when it comes to fine-tuning your soft tissue work. Full forearm contact on the ground. We have opposite knee that is down in a comfortable yet effective position for maintaining ground contact at the knee and at the foot. And then we have a fully extended knee on the backside here, the side that the foam roller is in contact with the foot on the ground. The more of the body that we can get in contact with the ground, the more that we can just chill out. There's a reason that we don't sleep standing up. We sleep laying down because it actually allows us to have a supportive structure to let the body relax. So in this position, Brittany, you are going to be starting to do the oscillatory technique. So you're gonna go about 1 to 2 inches. And I want you guys to figure out where this motion's coming from. Is she pushing off her arms? Is she squirming on her legs? How is this motion being created? Because this is very important in terms of optimizing your foam rolling. Now, when the foam roller is in contact with any of the lower extremity or the legs, we should be having the driving momentum coming from the upper body. So you can see here, Brittany's using her forearms, her elbows, and her hands in order to drive this motion, essentially with the pecs and the lats. This allows the targeted tissue, which is the quadriceps in this case, to stay relatively relaxed, while the opposite side is also supported by the ground. Good, you can relax for a second here. Now, the next thing that we need to be thinking about is neck positioning. Is Brittany having her neck down? Is she chicken necking up? Is she having a conversation about last night's Housewives episode with her training group? No, she has everything in neutral because as we're going to talk about in a couple slides here, breathing strategies are extraordinarily beneficial if you can do them the right way when it comes to blunting that sympathetic response, AKA staying chilled out. Now, with this specific technique, we want to be able to find areas of the tissues that are going to be the highest yield for us. Now, it's going to be different individual to individual, but for the most part, people are going to be mostly sensitive about the top quadrant. So the top fourth towards the hip on the front side, that second quadrant towards the lateral side, the third right down the middle, and then the fourth right over the teardrop muscle, which is the VMO. You guys can see that right there. Now, everyone's going to be different, but we need to actually make sure that we are getting a benefit from this. So Brittany, what is your relative pain scale? What do you feel in terms of when you're moving around 0 to 10? 2 is a good answer. Now, there's ways in order to actually bring up that sensitivity or bring back down that sensitivity. One thing that we can do is add a little bit of more tension into the chain. So what you're going to do here is stay in the same base position. You're just going to bend this back knee a little bit. Good. And now you're going to oscillate from here. Good. This allows us to tension down that anterior, that front side chain, and actually get it a little bit more sensitive. What's the pain scale at now? Okay, so we're right at about the peak that we want to be at. Why this matters is that we actually added tension into the chain that goes from the oblique sling on the front side of the body all the way down the front side of that thigh. As things get tighter, they usually get a little bit more sensitive. So utilizing a little bit more stretch in the tissues can increase the pain response. Remember, staying about 4 out of 10 or lower. And then as you straighten it back out and relax it, go back again. For most people, we need to bring them from 8 or 9 out of 10 down to 3 out of 10 to get the benefits. So usually trying to relax whatever extremity is on the foam roller, that's going to be a key there. How's that feeling, all right? Yeah, okay, cool. So that is our oscillatory technique. Tim, will you throw me that black pad? David, black pad? Getting eaten up. I love pads. You guys know that. Instagram, we have like 16 blue pads at my gym. We got black pads today. It's not as good as the blue pad, but black pads will do. So this next one, what we're gonna do is a trigger point technique on exactly the same tissues. Let's have you go on the opposite side so the camera can see on this side. So let's have you lay back down. Perfect. Yep. Yeah, perfect. Back in the same base position. Now, the thing to think about with trigger point technique versus oscillatory technique is the positions don't change. The goal changes in terms of the way that the body either moves or the foam roller moves. Oscillatory technique, we just had the foam roller moving. For this one, what we're gonna have is the body moving. So you are going to find a spot that you can feel about a 3 out of 4, 3 or 4 out of 10 pain scale, tightness, whatever you wanna call it. And then we're gonna start moving by bending the knee into full flexion and then fully extending it back out. So we're gonna keep the foam roller stationary and then let's go bend at the knee. Good. So with this trigger point technique, we're allowing a full stretch and then a full relaxation. So let's go back and forth. Let's do that 5 times. So what this is doing is tensioning down around the foam roller. We're moving the body over the roller, allowing for that slide glide mechanism to happen. Now, Brittany's on the lateral side of her thigh there. As you guys remember, 3 slides ago, we showed that one of the best neurological trigger point techniques, especially for hip function, is going to be on the lateral side of the thigh there. This one is extraordinarily simple. And the way to get more out of it is actually to turn the body a little bit more so you get on the lateral thigh. And then from here, let's go flexion, extension of the knee. This is gonna bias that lateral chain just a little bit more. And it's those fine-tuned things that bring somebody from a, why the hell am I doing this? Because I can't feel anything, into, wow, I can actually feel the sensation happening, so we can actually unlock those. So what you guys are gonna do right now, Brittany's gonna flip back around again, and we are gonna go with your foam rollers, which you should have, and we're gonna go step by step here for the oscillatory technique with the quadriceps. So first things first, we're gonna get into a plank position with our right leg foam roller perpendicular to the body in contact with that roller. The left leg is going to be out here in that frog position, forearms down on the ground, right leg is relaxed, shoulders, hips, and core are engaged only as much as we need to maintain the spine position. We are going to be driving with the arms, and we are going to be oscillating over the foam roller. Let's start. Neck is in neutral, spine and core are in neutral. We have the arms driving the action. You can notice that Brittany is breathing in and out comfortably, and that is the sign of targeting into the parasympathetic range of that CNS spectrum. 30 to 60 seconds here, because most people have two matching extremities, right and left. If you plan on foam rolling the right, you're going to end up foam rolling the left. That's where we get in that 2 to 3 minutes total. Okay, let's stop here. You're gonna stay in exactly that same position. Don't move anywhere. We're gonna do the trigger point technique. So instead of being totally parallel with the ground, what we're gonna do is we're gonna rotate away from the roller. And now we're gonna make sure that the foam roller stays stationary, and you're gonna flex and extend the knee. Perfect. Now remember, with the trigger point technique, about 10 to 15 seconds is going to be ideal there, especially in the more sensitive areas. 2 to 3 minutes is straight up torture if you are going to supersede that 4 out of 10 pain scale. How's everybody doing on the chat with being able to go through some of these and seeing it on video? All good? And as you guys have questions, as you're going through these demos, utilize our staff that is on chat support right now. We have 10 of the best experts in the PPSC available to you guys. So make sure you guys utilize them. So we're gonna stick with this, and we're gonna go right into the adductor group. So Brittany, let's stand up for a second here. And what position that I want you to get in here, we're gonna come straight on with the camera on this one, is that you are gonna have the foam roller parallel with your body. We're gonna have the knee above the hip, forearms down on the ground, and you are going to rotate your pelvis as close to parallel with the ground as possible. We'll start in that position. All right, this looks like a very similar base position to what we were just in. That's because when you have neutrality at the shoulders, the hips, and the core, it is going to look neutral. It is going to look similar because this is a prime position in order for us to have functional transference of something as simple as foam rolling into motions and positions that we potentially plan on training that day. So with the contact of the adductor group, remember, we're not going at specific adductors, the longness versus the magnus. In my opinion, that's clinical. For our human movement system, this is a key integral area that connects the knee to the hip to the pelvis. This is a very underserved area for one simple reason. It is really awkward to go into a public gym, put a foam roller right up into your private parts, into the groin, and foam roll on them with another individual looking at you awkwardly. Most people just avoid doing this because it's weird. You get attention, sometimes good, sometimes bad. And in all actuality, you just want to avoid it at all costs. But in terms of our posture and our positioning on our daily basis, handheld technologies, computers, driving, this is a group that we want to open up because external rotation and abduction of the hip, that is going to be a prime position in terms of trying to lateralize some movements, also trying to improve range of motion on base squats, single leg work, and also hip hinges. So in this position, we are going to start driving with the forearms. Now the drive is going to be lateral here. So as Brittany goes and starts doing the oscillatory technique, she's driving in and out with the forearms. The leg, the right leg in this example, stays totally relaxed. And the left leg's relatively relaxed here as well. If the foam roller is in contact with the lower body, upper body drives the motion. If the foam roller is in contact with the upper body, vice versa, lower body drives the action. This is one of the biggest mistakes that we see across the world with many of the best fitness professionals that come to our course actually making, And it's very simple once you teach your clients to do this the right way. Now, there are many different aspects of the adductors that you can get at. The key is that somebody feels the sensation 3 out of 10, sound like a broken record. Now, this is the one I actually prefer. In the adductor group, you have 2 really sensitive areas, mostly way up here, really the awkward thing in the gym. So find yourself a corner, close your eyes, and act like people aren't watching you. The second one is going to be right behind this VMO muscle, which is going to be right on the hamstring adductor complex. Let's go deep into the hip on this first one. So we're going to get that right up into the high hip. And what Brittany's going to do here is she's actually going to flex and extend her knee again, putting tension through that fascial and muscular chain. Everything else stays neutral with the trigger point technique. Remember, the foam roller stays stationary while the body moves over the roller. That is the key to this technique. Feeling okay here? And then let's go to the more sensitive of the 2. You're going to move the foam roller down towards the knee here. Boom. Going to pressure in, rotate pelvis down a tiny bit more. Good. And now flex and extend from here. This is the one that you definitely know something's happening. People start to sweat here. And if the pain scale gets too high, things that we can do to mediate that pain scale and bring it back down. 3 things. First one, you can move slower. As you move faster, the body actually tightens up. Second thing you can do, you can actually put more of your body weight through this opposite side, through the shoulders, and take some body weight away from that leg that is in contact with the roller. And the last one, which is probably your last option, is that you use a softer or different soft tissue tool. Now, this is a relatively soft foam roller. I'm a fan of the piece of shit foam roller that you can buy at Target. That's my favorite one. I have access to any foam roller in the world. I have 16 at my gym, and I end up using the black one that looks like it could be bought at Whole Foods because it was bought at Whole Foods. These are things that we can think about in terms of reducing the pain response here. So for you guys at home right now, you're going to get into this base position with Brittany. We are going to be down on the forearms. We're going to get back ready for the oscillatory technique. The foam roller should be right between the hip and the knee. From here, you are going to drive off the forearms with everything else neutral in the body, breathing, relaxing, moving 1 to 2 inches of relative action on the foam roller, 30 to 90 seconds per side. Give it a couple more seconds here. Find those areas that you want to address and address them. Trigger point technique, same base position again. We are going to do the one closer to the knee. So where I'm talking about here is right back here. Foam roller is going to be hitting you right on the base of the VMO. From here, same base position, knee pressures down into the roller, flexion and extension, straighten knee, bend knee. Tensioning the chain, we're gonna do this for about 10 to 15 seconds. Everything else staying neutral, breathing and relaxing. Good. How are we doing on the questions on the chat? Let's rotate about 45 degrees. So you're going to be facing this way. There you go. Perfect.
John, so how should we, good question. How do we adjust for someone that doesn't have the external rotation necessary to get down to the ground in that position?
So what we can do is just be very simple with what somebody can do. Remember the empowerment model. We're not going to tell somebody, oh shit, you can't get your knee higher than your hip. Theoretically, there's benefits to this. But in the real world, many people won't be able to get into that. It's less about the external rotation and it's more about getting the adductor out into a lengthened position, which is abduction. What we simply would do in that case is bring everything down and be able to tension down from this position. So allow somebody to start playing. The reality is if you have somebody that needs to be addressing their adductors with foam rolling, most likely they're the ones that are going to struggle to get in this perfect position. Now, that is an optimal position for somebody who's looking to gain or maintain. But in order to get somebody started, especially if this is their key linchpin, we need to allow them to bring their hip flexion down a little bit, but also they can rotate off of the foam roller a tiny bit as well. People will guide themselves into a comfortable position, and comfort is more important than trying to force feed a position that may be uncomfortable. Uncomfortable means that sympathetic spike, most likely. Good question. Then this last one, the lateral posterior hip. What we're gonna do here is we're gonna stand back up, Brittany, and we're going to be in another base position. Trying to watch myself on video here, make sure I'm in the shot. We're gonna be laying perpendicular to the foam roller. Now, the space that we're gonna be laying in here is the soft tissue between the bone on your hip and then the bone on your femur here. So you should have this soft tissue space that sits right in here. Now, the key here is that we are going to be down on a forearm. We're gonna have this leg over front, flat foot on the ground. And we're also gonna make sure that this bottom leg extended and then bent at 90 degrees at the knee. This is our base position that we're gonna start from, Brittany. So essentially what we're trying to access here is the lateral hip group. So the lateral hip group has a lot of different muscles that encapsulate the anterior, the lateral, and the posterior thigh. So you got some glute in here, multiple levels of the glute, something called the tensor fascia lata, a bunch of fancy muscle names that essentially don't matter to us as human movement strategists. What we're trying to do here is make sure that we can foam roll effectively in a spot that does affect both internal and external rotation of the hip, and centrally affects the tonicity of the entire hip complex and lower body itself. So in this base position, the first oscillatory technique is gonna happen with driving off of this shoulder. So Brittany's gonna use that shoulder to just drive back and forth. It's a tiny bit of range of motion. Good, right on the lateral thigh. Try to do a bad one for a second. So you're gonna it's gonna sound bad, but you're gonna shake your butt on camera in order to drive that motion. This is what we see from our clients, right? We see something really awkward, weird looking. You don't actually have command over the tissues here. You don't have command over the region. Reason being is you're trying to move on two different moving objects. The foam roller moves and the body moves. We never actually access the ability to get into these tissues with command. Instead, we're driving off the shoulder, little bit of motion where we can keep better neutrality here, better ground contact. If you're twerking on the foam roller and you're trying to foam roll your hips or your butt, you are not doing it correctly. Drive off the opposite side of the body. Big mistake that people make, game changer if you can do it correctly. This is the oscillatory technique. Remember, these muscles in here, they're tiny. So the smaller the muscle, the smaller the oscillation that we're actually having. Now, the one that I love the most is going to be internally and externally rotating the entire body over the foam roller with the neurological trigger point technique. Now, the neurological trigger point technique is going to cross friction across the anterior to the posterior. So what we're gonna do here is let's fix your foot just like this, and you're gonna internally rotate the whole body and then externally rotate. Notice that the hips are actually rotating here as well. Many times we just do T-spine rotations and the foam roller's in contact with the lateral hip. We need the motion to come from the hips as well as the thoracic spine here. We are moving as an integrated unit on that pillar complex, shoulders, hips, and core moving together. This one gets sensitive for people right at about 45 degrees right here. This is where you get that lateral glute med in contact with the posterior side, the back side of that tensor fascia lata. That's usually where people make the best gains here. But we can also sit on the back side of this muscle with the same technique. What you're gonna do, Brittany, is bring this leg and bring it right back to the back side of the body. Good. And you're gonna sit and you're gonna rotate backwards and then come back to the neutral position. Good. So this would be a more posterior glute emphasized trigger point technique for that exact same region. The reason that we move this foot was it allows us to stay neutral at the hips, shoulders, and core. You're gonna hear that a lot, so keep it in mind. Let's go through these one by one, and then we will move on to the upper body. So we're gonna get back into the position, first one. So you're gonna flip the foot over in this position. Guys at home, neutral, like you're doing a side plank. 90-degree bend at the knee. Extended bottom hip. Flexion, 90, 90. Foot contact with the ground on the front side. Neck neutral. And from here, we just have a tiny oscillation back and forth driven by the upper body. We're doing this for about 30, 60, top end of 90 seconds, making sure that we do it right and left. Good. For the trigger point technique, foam roller stays stationary, and we are going to be moving the body over the roller. Good. Hips move with the shoulders, making sure that we're getting internal and external. 10 to 15 seconds on those trigger point techniques. Get in and out, hit that light switch, and hopefully be prepared to move on. David, how are we looking on questions? Okay, great. Now, we're gonna move into the upper body here. Tim, let's hit the camera so I can stand up for a second. Right on. So we just went through the key lower body foam rolls. We're gonna go through the upper body ones. And I would argue that the upper body are something that you should really be looking at utilizing on a daily basis, whether you're training or not. Reason being is we are really in a postural pitfall society right now. We're sitting and we're sedentary more than ever before, and we have good data showing that even with people that are active in the gym 2, 4, 6 hours a week, the rest of their days are actually spent in really bullshit positions that we need to actually negate and get out of. One of the best ways to do that is to mobilize, get on the foam roller, pair it with a 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence, even on days that you don't train. The thoracic spine foam rolling drill, we call it the 3-way foam rolling drill. Simply put, it's my favorite drill of all time. If I'm gonna foam roll, whether it be a deadlift day, a bench press day, whether I'm squatting, whether I'm doing a track workout, the thoracic spine 3-way T-spine foam roll is in 95% of my own programs and my clients' programs. It's simply that effective, but it's also really matching the postural demands that many of us are in. For me, flying, writing, sitting, computer work, cell phone work, bending over my 5-year-old, spending a lot of time here. This is one that works effectively for reversing those postures that are into extension, external rotation, and overhead positions. So let's get Brittany down in these positions, and we will go through them one by one. So let's have you lay down. You're gonna have your mid back on here. You're gonna have to flip the camera again. Yeah, that'd be perfect. Perfect. Get it lower. In this position, where we want to be started is in a base position that has the feet down on the ground. We have the butt down on the ground. The foam roller is right between the shoulder blades. And this is a hook line position, we call it. And this allows us to have command of where the foam roller is going to actually push into the body, but more so controlling the hips and the pelvis so we don't compensate through this, which is one of the biggest mistakes that people make when they do try to address their mid back and their upper back or thoracic spine with foam rolling drills. Now, this is going to be a 3-part position, and you guys are going to do this with me as you go. So instead of demoing this one and then practicing, I want you guys to set this one up with me right now. So again, foam roller is going to be perpendicular to the body, feet flat on the ground. Your knees and hips are about 90 degrees. And what we're going to do is 3 different positions. The first one, we are going to actually have the arms up overhead. We're going to extend your neck, and you're going to lift the butt off the ground just an inch. So let's bring it down a little bit. Boom, right there. I want you to extend your neck a tiny bit more. Head leads the body. So in terms of your thoracic spine mobility requirements, if you get extension at the cervical spine, we actually get more out of the mid-back as well. So from here, we are going to do an oscillatory technique on the mid-back, just an inch or two of motion. And you guys should be knowing this by now, because the foam roller is in contact with the upper body, boom, we have the feet and the legs driving this motion. I want a little bit more extension. Good, there we go. As soon as Brittany extended her neck a tiny bit more, she was able to get more out of her upper body and also more out of her thoracic spine. Question just came through. This is one that we get every single course. If they have neck pain in this position, if a client or yourself has neck pain in this position, people don't know what to do with their heads, especially when they're in this inverted position. Brittany's a PPSC coach. This isn't her first rodeo. She knows what to do. We're gonna have support of the head, and we're gonna have fingertips supporting the head and the neck, whatever feels better for that client. We still get up into that overhead position at the arms, but we allow comfort so we don't spike the sympathetic response here. This is key. Remember, 1 to 2 inches of motion, 1 to 2 inches of the butt off the ground here. Good, relax for a second. So here, a little bit goes a long way. We don't want to be rolling up from the lower back all the way to the neck and back down. What we want to be focusing on here is right between the shoulder blades. If you think about the thoracic spine, it's actually a curve. We want to be on the apex of that curve. It's called a kyphosis. That can affect multiple joints above it, multiple joints below it. The biggest return on investment is getting on the apex of that curve. Now, that was the first position. Second position, we are going to work into global flexion. We were just in global extension with arms up overhead, neck extending, thoracic spine extending. That was more for the spine itself to try to mobilize those segments into extension. Now we got to get those scaps out of the way, those shoulder blades out of the way, access a little bit more soft tissue there. So what we're going to be doing here is flexing everything. So we're going to flex at the neck, flex at the mid-back, and you are going to give yourself a big hug because you love yourself and you're worth it. We're going to raise the butt off the ground here, and then you're going to access those soft tissues a little bit more better, especially between the shoulder blades. You have a lot of muscles that go from the base of the skull all the way down and accessing the shoulder blades at the top and the medial borders of those things. So if we can get the shoulder blades away, we can actually get the foam roller in better contact with the body itself. So you can see this is a tougher position. So if you even see Brittany here, she kind of lost her ability. She's moving backwards on the foam roller. So reset yourself, get it here, and then only about an inch or two of motion you're going to use. A little bit goes a long way here. Good. So controlling the pelvis, controlling the core, and then the big one on this is making sure that you flex the neck down. The neck down, having full cervical flexion, is going to add tension to the chain on the backside of the body and allow us to actually foam roll over those tension muscles for a little bit better of a response here. Good, let's bring you back over here. I'll bring the roller for you. That was the second of the positions, guys. So we did global extension, global flexion. Now we're gonna keep the butt on the ground. We're gonna do a trigger point technique as the third thoracic spine position. And this is going to be flexion to extension. And the added element here is going to be a deep diaphragmatic breath out as we extend up. If your client isn't audibly breathing, make them audibly breathe. If you are in a COVID state with mask mandates, throw a mask on them before they audibly breathe on you. Other than that, let's have them go. So we're gonna go from here, arms up overhead. Very nice. Let's go 5 reps. You guys are doing this along with Brittany right now. Same base position. The key here and how it differentiates itself from the first and second positions is the butt and the hips remain in contact with the ground. Let's pause for a second. I want to talk about one thing here. Now, we're going to want to do something called breaking the body in half. Because we have the hips pinned down into a posterior pelvic tilt, and we have the arms, the neck, and the thoracic spine moving into extension. These are two opposite positions. So many times, especially with your lay clients, they're going to break themselves in half right in the middle, and it's going to end up being a fulcruming point or a heavy extension moment that happens at the lower back here. Now, this can be avoided by just adding a little bit more tension into the front side, into the abs, and actually having them brace a tiny bit more than what they were doing with the first and the second positions. So let's add a little bit more tension into this chain and execute exactly the same way. This has been called rib flare. This has been called a lot of things. What we want to do is make sure that we're actually getting the mobility benefits from the thoracic spine because it's called a thoracic spine mobility drill. Having the segments move where we want them to move and not compensating in any way, shape, or form, that is the goal to simple and effective foam rolling done extraordinarily well. Perfect. All right, guys, let's move on, and we're going to reposition here, and we're going to get into foam rolling for the chest. Camera. So the position that we are going to be in here is going to be 45 degrees, right like this. It's going to be a little bit different with me laying on the ground here, but we're going to be down in this frog position out on the opposite side. We are going to be 90-90 positions with our forearms down on the ground, and we're going to have an extended back leg. Just like this, okay, Brittany? Now, we want this to be in contact right at the shoulder and the pec. So if we're thinking about muscles, which I don't recommend that we do because there's no such thing as isolation of muscles in training or in soft tissue work, we're thinking about the anterior delt, pec major, pec minor, this entire oblique sling that comes across the body here. Now, I want you to actually switch your legs here, Brittany. So you're going to come from here and you're going to frog out on the opposite direction. So if we're trying to tension the entire anterior oblique sling, we want constant tension on the foam roller at the left shoulder, and we want flexion at the right hip. This is where we get that cross link happening. And that actually makes a big difference. If you're at home right now, you can try this position with one leg bent on the right, with foam roller on the left, vice versa, and you will 100% feel a difference in terms of the tension and the tensile abilities of that chain being hit. Now, what we're going to do here is make sure that this foam roller is not negating. Here, come up for a second. This is not what we want to do. So the foam roller is right in Brittany's face. This is super awkward for everyone involved. We're going to be bringing this foam roller down, and we're going to be making sure that she can get that face as close to the ground as possible because we want to sink in on that shoulder complex. Now from here, we're going to use the oscillatory technique. Oscillatory technique is going to be driven by the right knee driving the motion at the left shoulder. Let's start using that 1 to 2 inches. You can see here that Brittany's using this knee and this foot to drive laterally. So the motion's going back and forth this way and a little bit up this way. What we don't want to do is, this is a bad one, just move around your shoulder on the foam roller. This is what we see. We lose all shoulder centration, we lose spinal neutral, and we look really awkward at the hips here. So making sure that we drive off the legs if the shoulder is in contact here. Now, for the trigger point technique, we need to be going through a couple different progressions here. The first one is going to be the Mr. Miyagi. It's going to be the wax on and wax off. So Brittany's going to be bringing through a full range of motion this way and then back the opposite way. Now with the trigger point technique, foam roller doesn't move. By the end of this segment, if you don't get this test question correct, shame on you. Oscillatory technique, foam roller moves. Neurological trigger point technique, foam roller stays stationary, body moves. Write it down. Now we're getting this cross frictioning happening here. And this is actually a really nice regional approach because we do target those dense tissues and those dense neurological tissues up in those key regions. And the second one that we can do is actually add internal and external rotation to this as well. So picking up the hand, bringing it back down. getting some of that rotation moment involved. Again, just trying to stretch that nerve bundle. Now, you guys should be trying this right now in this base position. This is a big one. Now, we do have some sensitivity in this area because we have a lot of tension, a lot of tone, and then a sensitive area for men, female, and everyone in between. Our breast tissue is what it is. So if we have concerns there, we want to access from laterally to medially. What we don't want to do, I'm gonna grab this for a second, is foam roll right over the middle of the chest. That's not going to be comfortable for anyone. And the buy-in factor of you utilizing this tool with your clients in the session is going to be low. So when we access this, make sure that it comes from the shoulder and it moves medially so we can stay comfortable, so it's not something that people feel awkward with. Buy-in really, really matters with this stuff. And the last one, we're going to do a posterior shoulder girdle. Brittany, come up for a sec. You're going to be laying perpendicular and you're going to put the back side of your armpit right on this. So feet are going to be this way, head's going to be this way. Now, the way that we position this with the body is going to be this foot comes here, this foot comes here, and you're going to bend at 90 degrees on the bottom leg. Now, this again is for the fascial lines. We want to have arm opposite of leg. Arm opposite of leg is key in this position. Now, Brittany not only has her arm up overhead, but she's externally rotated where her palm is up towards the ceiling. This allows us to, again, get the shoulder into a nice neutral position. This is going to feel good for most people. If they can't access this beautiful overhead position that Brittany has, coming into flexion and coming into slight internal rotation is acceptable. This is the glass ceiling. This is the reality of your clients. As long as we're elevating on that side and rolling over those key tissues, which are on the back side of the shoulder, that is going to be the key here. So Brittany's going to be driving off of her top foot here and having that motion happen. Good. Move this down a tiny bit more so you can drive. Good. There you go. Spine, hips, shoulders, pillar complex and neutral, neck and neutral. We're able to go through and 1 to 2 inches of rolling happening. This is going to be a little bit more sensitive, but in the ideal position, we will have shoulder over shoulder directly down to access the backside of that plane. Now, in the same base position, what I want you to do now is bend this elbow, and we're going to go into internal and external rotation for our trigger point technique. So you're going to come into internal and then externally the whole way. Good. Now, as she does this, notice the hands. So we not only want to rotate at the shoulder here, we want to actually rotate that entire plane. So if we add even more to this, so you're going to extend and externally rotate here, and then you're going to flex and internally rotate there. What this is going to allow us to do is just get maximal amount of those fascial planes involved with a very simple base position like this. Now, this looks like something that we've been taught not to do, which is the sleeper stretch. Similar looking position, but not forced internal and external rotation here. This is over a neurological bundle on the posterior shoulder, and we are utilizing those fascial slings to get the most out of 10 to 15 seconds here. Cool, you can come up from there. Dave, let's take some questions. And let's fix the camera again.
So we got a couple questions. Number one, which is the one that was a while ago, is where does the Theragun fall into the equation of this kind of stuff? Because it's so popularized that how is someone going to be able to use this in order to supplement their stuff?
All right, so this is a very, very popular training tool the last 2 to 3 years. Now, if you are using self-directed work, meaning that you are the athlete and you are utilizing it on your own body, go to town on this thing. I still prefer the active nature of being on the ground and foam rolling and getting into these base positions and having neutrality at the shoulders, hips, and core. But if you want to utilize this thing to feel good, I personally use it a lot for recovery. Has nothing to do with the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence. I like laying on my couch and like hitting my legs and my shoulders as I do nothing else other than that. But where we go wrong here is if you are a trainer, you are a non-licensed coach, you utilizing this on Brittany right now in a vast majority of the states and countries out there, this is against scopes of practices. When it comes to soft tissue work, the intent to manipulate tissues or be hands-on manually with your clients is against your scope of practice. So stay within it, keep the guns off of people. If they want to utilize it on themselves, cool. And if you really want to utilize this gun on somebody or touch somebody, go to a licensed massage therapy school, get a doctorate in chiropractic or in physical therapy. That is within their scopes of practice. We have our scope as practice as well. We just need to know how to separate that to keep liabilities down.
I was gonna say, one of the other questions that we're seeing is, is specifically when it comes down to people that are doing foam rolling and getting down to the ground. What are some of the options that people have available to them if they can't get down for the posterior shoulder, they can't get down for the adductors? How can we regress that potentially for older clients or clients who are heavier and may inadvertently hit over 4 out of 10 pain threshold just by weight?
No doubt.
No doubt. It seems like a simple thing, but for a lot of our clients, especially that are obese, are morbidly obese, or are dealing with orthopedic issues at the knees, the spine, and the hips, getting off and on and off of the ground could be a key performance indicator lift for them. But what we do is don't put them in no man's land. Right now, we're in no man's land on the turf here at BioFit. If I had a client that had those specific needs, keeping that empowerment model, I'd have them next to a rack, next to a suspension trainer, and having a bench there. If you're in a therapeutic clinic, there's reasons that they have those high-low tables that can go down 6 inches all the way up to 12 inches, and people can get on and off and actually access there. But it's as simple as having people being able to be supported, getting into a standing position from half kneel or tall kneel, off of a rack, off of a suspension trainer, or with a bench at their disposal. Biggest mistake that people will make is putting them on the turf because this is only where we foam roll, as opposed to having common sense and giving people the support of having key victories, which may be foam rolling over where everyone else is doing weight training. Yes. Click on it. There we go. No, the last one we can talk about here that really doesn't have a whole lot to do with the 6-phase dynamic warm-up sequence, but it is a common enough question that we get that we put it into the curriculum for PPSC here, is when else would we utilize soft tissue skills? Thank you so much, Brittany, we're good. When else would we utilize soft tissue skills? It is for a recovery and regenerative purpose. We've had great amount of success utilizing 1 to 3 minutes in phase 1 of the pre-training 6-phase sequence. But we'd also be negligent to not mention that there is a time and a place to utilize a more global foam rolling technique for regenerative and recovery purposes. Now, what I'm talking about here is utilizing the same base positions that we just talked about for the oscillatory technique, for the neurological trigger point technique, simply making bigger passes of the foam roller going up and down the body. Bring that video down a little bit, down and zoom out. So instead of doing an oscillatory technique that may look like this, instead of doing a neurological trigger point technique that looks like this, a global foam rolling technique would go across the entire muscle belly or across the entire region at about 8 to 12 inches of relative motion. Here's where it gets interesting. This is the type of foam rolling, regenerative, recovery-based foam rolling techniques that most people end up doing before their session as opposed to after. So we're trying to fine-tune the pre-training foam rolling in such a way that we can get maximal benefit for the movement system to be utilized optimally at that point in time. But using a soft tissue technique that really drives local blood flow into the tissues, helps nutrient exchange, also helps excrete edema formation between the joints and some of the more active tissues in the training session to get back up in the central circulation and excretion, that can be a help for expediting the recovery process. Directly after training, a secondary session after training, which may be 4 to 6 hours after the training session that day, or as a standalone recovery day. So we don't have those really fine parameters of 1 to 3 minutes here if you are going to use foam rolling as a recovery tool. What we have here is as much time as you want to invest into the foam roller after the training session, because the work is done and recovery becomes the goal, not prep for performance. Two different things, exactly the same setups, but just a different technique that you can utilize, which is called a global soft tissue technique. Click me through, Tim. Now, I'm going to bring up David Otey, who is our master instructor for the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification. David has taught more PPSCs this year than any one of our staff. And he's also the chief content officer at the Pain-Free Performance Specialist certification. You guys know him because he is the voice of the Pain-Free Performance podcast, which is going to be coming to all of you guys for free twice a week here on out forever. So I tend to learn from my staff as much as they learn from me. That's how we know we have a big, badass team of experts in the industry. And one of the things that I enjoyed learning about the most over the last number of years working directly with David was breathing strategies and how to actually alleviate chronic pain and stress conditions with something as simple as exchanging air. So I'm going to hand the beats over to David. He's going to bring us through phase 0, which is actually a regress phase from phase 1. And then we're going to take a break for a couple minutes here. So I'm going to hand this off to David.